2. The Mishnah is from the words of Rabbi Chanina, who is referred to as Sigan HaKohanim. Let me just get the, hang on a second, we'll just get the share here. Rabbi Chanina Sigan HaKohanim, he's the deputy to the Kohen Gadol. It's like, not exactly like the vice Kohen, but he would actually take the place if the Kohen Gadol was not able to do his job. This Rabbi Hanina was the person who was second in command, and he was also like take care of all the stuff that needed to get done to make sure that the Kohen Gadol could do his job. He lived during the Roman period, and was obviously a time of great strife. And during that time, also one of the things about was the Kohanim was that the Romans used to sell the right to be the Kohen Gadol. There was a lot of strife in the Jewish community as well, and people who weren't even a Kohen would buy the rights to be the Kohen Gadol. And usually, if you go into the Holy of Holies, you died. So a lot of them didn't make it, and there was a lot of turnover in the Kohen Gadol. I'm not sure why people wanted to be when they knew that, but it seems that it was a coveted position, and they would be paying the Romans. So Rabbi Hanina never wanted to be the Kohen Gadol because that was not appropriate for him, he felt, and he was the deputy. The Mishnah tells us as follows: Rabbi Hanina Sigan HaKohanim Omer, the deputy of the Kohen Gadol, was saying, "Heve mispalel b'shlomo shel malchus." A person should pray for the welfare of the government. She'elmole morah, because if we didn't have fear, if we were not in fear of the government, ish esre'ehu chayim bela'o, a person would swallow his friend alive. Basically, chaos would reign. So here we have this idea of praying for the government. We are familiar that in many shuls, we have a prayer for the government, right? That on Shabbos morning, generally, we add in a special prayer for the welfare of whichever government we happen to be living in. Obviously, we're doing it for Canada, but people in other countries would be having one that would be appropriate for their country. So this is the source of that a person should be praying for the welfare of the government. Now, here, it doesn't say pray for the welfare of the king, and it says pray for the welfare of the government, because the government is more than just the king. A king is just one person. Even when you had kings, well, most of our kings today are sort of like figureheads in a way, but even when a king is going to be totalitarian, still are advisors, and you still have in different areas, you're going to have other positions of authority. So, for example, the Tiferes Yisrael, and actually the Tosfos Yom Tov also says the same idea, that it's not the king only, because you could have a lot of other leaders, and they also need to be they need to be in good health and have the right frame of mind. So for every level of government, we want to make sure that that level of government is working at the best it can, and therefore we are praying for their welfare, that it should be a operating government that's operating well. Obviously, we'd like to have an honest government and one that's good to the Jews, but it's generally that if you have a government that is doing its job, and there's law and order in the country, that is an essential. So in order for individuals to be successful, it's dependent on the welfare of the government and the country in general. In addition, the Tiferes Yisrael points out, in addition to the prayer that we say on Shabbos for the leaders of the government or the government itself, we also have another prayer that we say on Mondays and Thursdays after when we're wrapping up the Torah, which is not for the leaders of the government, but we have a special prayer for the people who are Torah scholars, the people who are learning Torah, because they are leadership for us, and therefore, as leaders, we are also praying for their welfare and that they should be doing well. The idea of the people, if there's going to be no good government, and therefore people will swallow each other whole. So the Bartanura points out that there's a verse in Habakkuk that tells us that Hashem says that Hashem makes man like the fishes of the sea. That we're compared to the fish. The way the fish work is large fish eat small fish. Right? You generally don't have you don't in other animals. It's not so common that just because you're large you eat the smaller one. You may be because you're a lion, you may eat something else, but it's not just like automatically large ones eat small ones, especially of the same species. So with the fish, just like the large fish eat the small fish, so too, he says, if we didn't have fear of the government, that's what human beings would be doing. The strong ones would be swallowing up the weak ones, and therefore that's the concept. Um, the the Rabbeinu Yonah also points out that when it talks about praying for the welfare of the government, that's true, but it's really much broader than that. That a person should really be praying for peace for everyone, for the entire world, not just our country. And a person should feel the pain and the suffering of other people. We're supposed to feel for everyone else, not just the Jewish people, but for everybody else. And a person, therefore, should not only daven for our own needs, but we should be davening for everybody, that everybody should have peace. And he says the idea is, if there's peace in the kingdom, ultimately you have peace in the world. Because generally speaking, if a country is really doing well and is at peace, they don't really need to go and they don't start up fighting with others. It's usually you have internal problems, you solve them by starting up with somebody else. So we have that idea. Another thing that Rashi points out is also that we do, besides the prayer that we do on Shabbos, we also have on Sukkot. On Sukkot, there was 70 different offerings that were brought over the course of the holiday. And we say this in the maftir that we do, or the laning, the Torah reading that we do on Sukkos from Parshas Pinchas, which talks about the offerings. So there were each day a certain number. And if you added them all up, it was 70. 70 corresponds to the nations of the world. And the offerings that were brought on Sukkot, those special offerings, were for the nations of the world. So here we had on Sukkot, which is actually, Sukkot is a holiday of peace, right? The Sukkot Shalom, the Sukkot of peace. We were making offerings for the nations of the world. So we were not only thinking of ourselves, but it's for everyone as well. Another point that Rabbi Lau points out is that, and he's quoting Rabbi Meir Shapiro, is that when it comes to governments, he says, even an oppressive government is better than no government. If you have no government, everything's total chaos. An oppressive government, even though there are negatives, there's still structure. And actually, we've seen that in our own times where other dictatorships in the last 30 years or 20 years even that have been taken down, and then chaos ensued. And in many ways, it was worse than it was before. So while there's a lot of negatives in having these oppressive governments, it can be much worse when you have nobody in control. And he points out that in our Mishnah, so Rabbi Hanina, he lived during very tough times. He lived during those Roman times, and there was a lot of oppression. And still, he's advocating prayer for the government. Even though he's living in Roman times when the Romans are oppressing the Jews, and he's still saying we better to have this than to have nothing. And there's a verse that was quoted from Yirmiyahu that says that it's talking about the Babylonian exile, that telling us that the Jewish people, we should seek the welfare of the city in which we end up. Even when we're going to exile, we should be seeking the welfare of that place. So we have this idea then that we should be. It's important to be concerned with the place that we're in, because it's better than chaos, no matter how bad you think it might be. Obviously, we're not talking about necessarily where we are. One more point for today, and Irving Bunim tells the story of the Chafetz Chaim, who was a Russian czar. The official came to him, and he saw on his table he had ripped postage stamps, and the postage stamps had the picture of the czar on it, and he said, like, what's going on here? Why do you have these ripped postage stamps? He was like, you're ripping up the czar's face. And he said, no, well, the reason is because I just had some things I sent to somebody with I didn't send it through the mail. I sent it with a person who was going there, and I had 10 different things that I was sending. And I didn't want to cheat the government of the postage. So I basically took the 10 stamps and I made them no good anymore. And I'm using, even though I had a private someone, I didn't want to take the money away from the government. And the official said, "Wow, you can if this is how the Jews are, then our country is blessed because look how amazing that is that he didn't want to cheat the government, so he's paid for the stamps, and even though he didn't have to use them." Okay, have a great day, everyone.